Today I was going to talk about Gudrun Himmler, who died. She was 88. She's the daughter of Heinrich Himmler, one of the five top Nazis in World War II. And a lot of people knew her, and she traveled around and she lived until she was 88. Now, she was born in 29, August 29, um, and she was the only child of Hermann Himmler, except um, they adopted a son, but her father had two children with a mistress, and basically that was their family. And it's funny, but she was coming up. She was 11, 12 years old, um, right in the middle of this World War II, since she was born in 29, so 41, she would have been 12 years old, 12, 13, and then um, she went around with her father a lot. She was a nice looking girl, as you could see by our pictures. Blonde hair, beautiful girl. And she had a diary, and she would write in the diary that, they would take trips and everything, but she didn't really understand, what was going on, because um, she said she was with her father, and they called her Puppy. That's German for doll. They called her Puppy. And she always thought her father never did anything wrong. And she loved her father, and she wouldn't give up her name for nothing. Until she was dead, all these people said, "Don't tell anybody your last name, Himmler. Don't tell them that's your name. Don't tell them. Because first of all, you won't be able to get a job. Secondly, they'll probably try to kill you." Because everybody knew his name. He was big, powerful. He was probably one of the top three guys in the
Wow.
Nazi organization. And he was also head of the SS. He was the number one guy there. So all along, everybody said, um, don't tell anybody your name and go apply for a job. Because after a while, when the war was over in 45, she needed some work, and they said, go try to get a job, but don't tell them your last name. But she didn't buy that. She was proud of her name, and she says, I don't care what they say, I'm telling them my name. And it's funny that a lot of people she went to school with, when the war was over, they made on like they didn't know her or something, or if they had a dance,
Wow.
she would be at the dance and nobody would come dance with her.
Wow.
Now, she said if Hitler would have won the war, they would have probably been all lined up trying to dance with her. But the way it was is nobody wanted to have anything to do with her, and once she mentioned her name, um, that was the end of the party. Princess. Um, and They said she was beautiful. She was mentioned in a lot of books that were written about the Nazis during the war and right after the war. And one thing she did after the war is she was in an organization that tried to help Nazis, because a lot of them had nowhere to stay, no work, and no food. So there was an organization set up um, to help these people, and she was in it, and she worked for it, and she tried to help them get food, a place to live, and things like that. Because when the war was over and you walked up, I don't care who it was, you saw anybody they would say you gotta move on, because everybody, for one thing, was she didn't want anything to do with him, and they figured it would just be a lot of trouble. So she never would. Well, she wouldn't change her name. And everybody told her, get rid of your name, get rid of your name. In fact, get married to somebody just so you can pick up a name. At the end of as she was getting older, she did marry a guy named Burwitz, Burwitz, and surnamed Gudrun Burwitz in our heading here, and she had 2 children by him. But she, under no circumstance, would ever introduce herself by anything but her father's name. Her father's name was Heinrich Himmler. When you mentioned his name, a lot of people were scared and they would start running. But she wasn't changing her name for nothing, and she didn't change it.
Wow.
She went with him on different trips, and sometimes she would go to a camp where they killed people. And in her diary, she would write, they went to this place and they had such a beautiful time. They had food, and they were looking at the flowers and everything and walking around. But like one of the camps had 30,000 people killed. But in her diary, she never mentioned about anybody getting killed or getting burned. Now, whether she knew that or saw it, or they kept her away from it, I don't know. But when she went to the camp, it was a party that day. And they were jumping around, eating and all that. And she didn't have nothing to do with these people that they were directing into the ovens. Or she didn't mention it when she wrote her diary. Just said we had a good time, we ate, and saw all the flowers. And these camps were in these different towns. So that's strange that they either kept her away from the ovens, or when she wrote it in her diary, she wanted to leave that out. Because she went to a town where the only thing they had there is a camp. So, it'd be hard for somebody to go there and say, I don't know nothing what's going on. All I know is we had a nice meal, we walked around. But that's the way she was.
Crazy.
And when they wrote about her in these different books, that's what they talked about. That to her, the Nazis and everything were fine, and there were no problems. They lived their lives, and that's one reason she was proud until she was dead. In the last few days at 88, she was always proud that she was a Nazi. And she mainly tried to certify that she followed in her father's footsteps. She loved her father. And he's in the picture here, Heinrich Himmler. And I know he was fired. Hitler told him to do something near the end of the war. And supposedly he was trying to end the war. Say, let's forget about it. But Hitler fired him at the end of the war, and then he moved around a little, and then he ate a bullet, and he swallowed a bullet, and he died. And it was about the time when Hitler died. So
if you swallow a bullet, you die?
Yeah, somehow he was in a place and he had a bullet and he was tried to chew it and all that and swallowed it. I guess he was committing suicide, and it killed him.
Wow.
But the story's interesting because in my mind I never really followed in the footsteps of one of the biggest Nazi leaders in our time. And you never hear the children mentioned. And this girl seemed to be in the limelight all the time, but she was a beautiful, beautiful girl. And she, in fact, she's talking about when they went to the camp. she said in her diary, we saw the pear trees, we saw all the pictures painted by the prisoners, marvelous. And afterward, we had a lot